Hey everybody, this is Movie Trailer Trash, and I just watched the movie Mary Poppins Returns.
That's right, baby. It's time for movie trailer trash. Enjoy.
All right, so as I said, I just watched Mary Poppins Returns, I being Bethany, and Charlie did not watch it, so I brought a special guest with me today, and it's my sister Jacqueline.
Hi.
So, I did mention before that I would probably see this movie with my sister and my mom,
Yep.
and that is what happened over the Christmas kind of weekend. So that was fun. And we're going to revisit this. We've done this once before with the movie Searching, and so we're going to do it again and tell you guys what we thought about it. We're going to start with spoiler free, and then we'll let you know when there's spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, you can turn it off at that point. So, we'll start off just by talking about what we thought the Rotten Tomatoes scores were going to be. So, I thought that it was going to get an 88% from critics and a higher score from the audience. Charlie thought it was going to get a 98% from critics because he thought people were just going to kind of freak out about it. Like, I think like people have been doing for a lot of these remakes of like TV shows, you know, because a lot of the TV show remakes, people are just crazy about them. Like when Roseanne came back, people were just like, "Oh my gosh!" And
but
it was fine.
That wasn't a remake; that was a continuation.
Or continuation. Well, this isn't a remake either, I guess.
True,
so,
but it has.
Or like Will and Grace.
Yeah, but
that's
again
really
was
popular.
continuation of the same characters.
Yeah.
So
I think he was thinking, since everybody likes all their childhood stuff coming back, people will really like this.
Maybe. I will say, when I listened to that episode, I kind of had my doubts, but that's because I know how big. I mean, even when the idea came out, people were like, "Oh, nothing's ever gonna beat the original. Why even try?"
Mm-hmm.
So I think there were a lot of people coming into it with that attitude to begin with. So I kind of expected, if it went well, that it would be somewhere in the 70s. I thought it'd be controversial.
People were probably skeptical and worried because people, you know, don't want people to mess with their childhood.
Yeah.
Which that's not what people are doing, but that's what people feel like. They feel like it's a personal attack on their childhood. And it's like, your childhood was still great. You can go back and watch Mary Poppins anytime.
There's a lot of emotions tied up with that you don't even realize. I think that when you grow up with a movie, it's so different than when you see it later. Anyways.
This is true. So Mary Poppins actually got 77% from the critics and 68% from the audience. So we were off. I was a little closer, but not by much. We definitely overshot it.
I will say that I saw it twice. I saw it opening night with my husband, and then I saw it with Bethany and my daughter and my mom that Saturday, so just a few days later. And I actually liked it even more the second time. I enjoyed it the first time, but I liked it even more the second time.
Yeah, so Jacqueline liked it enough to see it twice, just a few days apart. So that tells you what she thought. We're gonna rate it on a scale from bad, meh, good, and awesome, because that's the scale that Charlie created last time we did a review. So I will start off. I thought that it was good. So, what did you think?
I thought that it was awesome. Not original Mary Poppins awesome, but in its own right, awesome.
Sure. So, obviously, I would hope you thought it was awesome because you saw it twice.
Well, I was going to see it twice anyway so that my daughter could see it.
That's true. You kind of had to.
Yeah.
I mean, well, actually, you didn't have to. You could have waited for her to be available, but you had to see it right away.
Yes.
So my sister's kind of a big super fan of Mary Poppins.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing to note.
You all at your trivia night had a question about Mary Poppins that nobody else answered, and I missed that one. But when I did arrive, I was able to answer it. It was, what are the 4 jobs that Bert had in Mary Poppins?
You knew all four?
Yep.
Could you name them right now?
Yes, I could. So he was a chimney sweep, a musician, a screever. It's an artist of highest degree, and a kite salesman.
The kite salesman one is the one I wouldn't have got. So yeah, in our trivia night, I remember when I wrote that question, I was like, what's the 4th one? I had to look it up. And then I was like, kite salesman. The funny thing is, Charlie and I were remembering it as maybe a balloon salesman, which there is a balloon salesman in this new one. So that's a mini spoiler, but not really.
I think they show that in the preview.
Yeah, there's balloons.
Yeah.
People like balloons. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was good. The reason I'm not saying it's awesome is because, I mean, honestly, who knows? Because maybe if I saw it again, I would think differently. It is really hard when you're going in and you're watching a kids movie. And you're hoping that it reminds you of the kids movie that you saw when you were a kid, but the songs are totally different. And so,
And if it reminded you too much of the one you saw before, then you'd feel like, oh, they're just doing a repeat of the same stuff. So I found myself, anytime I had a criticism, I was either complaining because it wasn't enough like the original, or I was complaining that it was trying to be like the original. And I realized, like, okay, I can't have it both ways.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it was good. I definitely liked it. I think it would be really enjoyable for anyone who has kids. I think a lot of kids will probably like it. There was a lot to say about it. I do think it was well written and well acted. So that's the two things that we talked about during our last review, is that those are the most important things. If it's a good story and good acting, if one of those falls through, it's not going to be that great. I thought it was a really good story, and we'll talk about that in the spoiler section.
It's very different from the movies that are made nowadays, which you would expect, but I think that that's one thing that makes it a little difficult to categorize in your mind. You're trying to make sense of it, is that, you don't have, I don't know how to explain it, but you don't have movies like this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you have family-friendly movies, but it kind of takes you back whimsical to a different time.
Yeah.
Right? Which is what I think we were all hoping for, at least all of us fans. So before we move on to the no spoilers section, should they see it, and where, when, and how should they see it? So what do you...
I think they should see it, and I think they should see it while it's still in the theater if they can. But if not, I feel like it will still be okay. Like, I think that it will be fine to rent it later too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the special effects, you don't need to see it in theater because it's like animation. It's not big explosions and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it is really fun, and so I think especially with time coming up, a lot of people have time off for the first of the year. People have kids that are out of school for winter break. It would be a great thing to take your kids to, so I say go and see it. Plus support interesting new scripts. So,
and even if you don't have kids, I would say if you grew up loving Mary Poppins, you should see it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you had to have kids to be there. I obviously don't, and I was there, so it's whatevs. All right, so we're going to move on to spoilers. So all of you people who haven't seen it yet, just turn us off, go see it, and then you can come back and listen to the spoiler part.
That's right, everyone. It's spoiler time. Pause the episode now if you don't want to hear spoilers. Oh, I'll wait. And here we go.
Okay, spoiler time. Time to spoil it all. Hopefully not. Hopefully all of you who are listening have already seen this part. So I re-listened to our episode about Mary Poppins today, and Jacqueline listened to it recently as well. So I just kind of wanted to go over a few of the things that we got right and things that we may have gotten wrong, and maybe kind of go into a little more deeper conversation about what we thought of it.
One thing you got right is that Charlie did not see it in the theater.
That's
so
true. He claimed that he wouldn't, and he was right. However, I did think that I was going to see it with my whole family, and I just did it with the ladies, but that's okay. It was a good time. So first of all, Emily Blunt. So we talked about Emily Blunt and how I thought she was great for this role, and how at least in the trailer, she seemed to be really nailing the character. And I think that was absolutely right, because I mean, for me, the whole way through, I was just like, gosh, she's so good. She is Mary Poppins. I mean, her speaking voice, her kind of comedic timing, even just the way she held herself, all was just so great. And I'm sure that she worked really hard. Actually, I saw today I was watching a few interview clips on YouTube, and I saw that she said she tried to base the character off the books. She tried to not like watch the original movie until after she had kind of decided how she was going to do the character.
Like
which
she had
is
seen the
interesting.
original as a kid, but it had been a long time, and
because she said she didn't want to be a cheap imitation of Julie Andrews, and I think that's good because I mean she did feel like the same character, but it would be bad if it felt like she was just trying to imitate her. She really had to embody the character.
Well, and she has a lower register for her singing voice, and so her talking voice was also lower, and I felt like that was good. It didn't feel like an imitation. It felt like it, and I have read the first Mary Poppins book. I haven't read any of the others, but just based on reading the book, I feel like she did a good job with bringing. So I think some of the differences that I read between Julie Andrews' Mary Poppins and hers is that like maybe it was a little bit more conceited and sometimes just kind of like out there and weird
in the book or in the movie?
In the book, and the way that the way that Emily Blunt portrayed her.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Ryan brought up, Ryan's my husband, when he saw the movie was that he said that he felt like she was maybe a little bit more conceited and a little bit into like wanting to show off, whereas Mary Poppins in the original was or, you know, Julie Andrews' version was like, oh, no, I'm not going to use my magic. But then she would reluctantly do it.
Like kind of roll her eyes like, okay, I guess I'll
show.
Well,
but
like
the
Bert,
book,
she was like, oh, you're doing it all wrong. Like, you know, and so she's like, it's like she got tricked into it. Like, okay, since you're doing it wrong, I'll show you.
Yeah.
But I disagree with him on that because I do think that there were plenty of instances where she was like, you know, what are you talking about? You know, like when the kids woke up and she's like, oh, you've had a terrible dream.
Yeah.
And they were
she
like,
definitely
no, it
still
really
hid
happened.
it. But when it came time to use it, she didn't necessarily hesitate. Like jumping into the picture in the original, she kind of hesitated.
Yeah. But once she was in that picture, it was all penguins
she was
and
all
merry-go-rounds, and she was just having a blast.
And I think that's one thing Emily Blunt did very well with the there's kind of a change in character between when she's in the imagination land, whatever you want to call that, and when she's not. Like she's much more serious outside of it, but in it she's a little bit more carefree and fun, and that's how it was in the original. So I felt like she did a really good job with that. Yeah,
I mean and so she was still conceited in the original. I think it's funny because I mentioned that in our episode originally. I was saying, you know, the thing about Mary Poppins is she's kind of super conceited. She's like, oh, you know, practically perfect in every way, you know, but at the same time she also acts kind of humble, but it's like humble brags, you know, like Bert would say something and she'd be like, oh really, like, oh come on Bert, you know, like acting all embarrassed, but clearly she agrees. And I thought they had lots of little moments where she did that in this, like
do you really think so? Did she say that once?
Really? Do you think so? Yeah. When he said she still looked wonderful or whatever. I think it was Jack said like something about how good she looked. And she's like, really? Do you think so? And she's like smiling.
I will say, I think
it was really funny.
One of the big differences with their relationship is that there was always a little bit of flirtiness between her and Bert, even if it was no more than flirty stuff. Yeah. But with this one, because there was a little bit of a romance between Jane and Jack, it was very clear that there really wasn't any flirting going on between Jack and Mary Poppins in this one, which I thought was fine. I thought it was a little forced that she was like, oh, you should be with Jane because Jane's alone. But I mean, it wasn't bad. I just didn't feel like it kind of seemed a little shoved in there and unnecessary, but maybe they were just trying to establish that like she wasn't into him. I don't know. I don't think it really mattered. I thought it was cute. I mean,
Jane was really cute. I liked the lady who played Jane.
I think I liked Jack the most actually when he was interested in Jane because it made him seem a little bit more real. I don't know. We can get to Jack later, but
we'll get to Jack.
Issues with Jack. Jack is Lin-Manuel Miranda, by the way.
Yes. And so let's see, just a little thing here. So I mentioned before that Colin Firth has a bad face, and I agree with that. And I'm just saying that and moving on. So, but he did fine in this movie.
I agree.
Yeah, like what's the point? I don't get it. I don't get how he was ever the lead in a rom-com.
But
or
I mean,
whatever.
it was fine for this. He
yeah,
should
it was
have a
great
bad
for this.
face
He
for
was
this.
kind of a mean
He's
guy.
a bad guy. He had a bad face.
Yeah, and it
Makes
worked for the
sense.
king's speech too, because he's just the king. He didn't have to. Anyway, so the humor of this, I was saying that I thought it was spot on based on the trailer, and I do think the trailer did such a good job of showing you just enough that you're like, okay, they've got the spirit of it. That's what I think they needed to do with the trailer, is just show you like, look, guys, we got it right. Like at least it looks right, it sounds right. You may not love the story because it's not the one you saw when you were a kid, but give it a try.
And I actually really loved the story.
Yeah, I
like
thought the story was great.
I think
it
that's
might
one of my
have been
favorite
one of the
parts.
improvements.
Yeah.
You know, like the story had more substance.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Which I mentioned that toward the end of our episode, I was talking about how it looked like it would be more emotional. Charlie was like, yeah, because his wife died. We knew that from the trailer. And I was like, yeah, in the first one, it was all like, you know, I don't have time to have fun with my kids. I've got to make money.
Yeah.
You know, that it was kind of
Whereas-
like frivolous. It was like, come on, be a dad, care about your kids. But in this one, it's more like he's going through some emotional trauma. You know, it's not that he's a bad dad by any means.
Yeah, and he's actually a really good dad. Like that's one of the things. So there were a lot of things that were kind of opposite from the first one that I liked.
That's
like
true.
the intro song by Michael, it's very understated, but I was listening to it tonight and I realized like he's up in the attic and he's looking for something and he's thinking about his wife and he sings and it's very like humble and sad and sweet. And he talks about how he wishes that she was there to help him, you know, learn how to brush his daughter's hair.
Mm-hmm.
And then it ends with the line, each moment since you went away, dear, my question is, Kate, where'd you go? And it was just so sweet. And I think that it kind of showed his different character versus his dad. But then I thought about that. I was like, well, maybe that's the type of character that his dad had after that experience.
Yeah,
his dad
for sure.
clearly was a changed man after the whole experience.
I think so. I mean, yeah, we would hope so, because first of all, you're going to be a lot like your parents. You're going to parent a lot like your parents. And so, yeah, I think it was kind of a neat way to see what happened to Jane and Michael. Like, who did they become? And they clearly became great people. And that song was so sweet.
They just have such a cute sibling relationship.
Yeah, like she doesn't live nearby, but she comes by when needed. And yeah, they were great. But that song was so sweet. And actually, I saw in an interview today, Emily Blunt was talking about how she loved that song. How like when he sang that song, it was just
That's when her husband John
yeah, that's what it was. She said
John Krasinski.
She said I think he started crying during that and then he
Never
cried
stopped.
the rest of the movie. And that's the thing. So it really was way more emotional. So it still had the humor, but it gave a little bit more feeling. So I mean, in Mary Poppins, probably the first moment that I can think of that's kind of sad is when the old lady is singing Feed the Birds. And it's almost like you don't really know why it's sad.
Yeah.
You know, at least as a kid. I mean, it's sad because it's like a little old lady. She's caring for creatures that nobody else cares for. Maybe nobody notices her or cares for her. Like, there's lots of reasons, but there's just something like melancholy about it. But there's no real sadness so much as just kind of feeling irritated and like unnoticed. Like the kids are like, you know, trying to get their dad's attention all the time.
Maybe they're like the birds.
Yeah.
Nobody
but yeah, I
notices
think
them.
that because that is like they're always like trying to get their attention. And doesn't she say that, like Mary Poppins, doesn't she say something about how they just want you to spend time with them? I don't know. She says something where she's like, if you would just see them, like,
yeah, I don't remember.
I mean, we haven't watched that one recently. I should definitely go back. And I did say in the episode that Charlie has to see it as an adult, the regular Mary Poppins.
Definitely.
He hasn't seen it since he was a kid, and he was trying to say that it's not really his cup of tea. I'm like, you don't remember. You don't know.
It's like
You don't know what your
I
adult
watched
cup of tea is.
It's a Wonderful Life as a kid and liked it, but I watch it now as an adult and like it and appreciate it for different reasons. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, the humor was great. There was definitely some quotable lines. I don't know if there's any favorites that you have.
Also, I do have a few. I just wanted to mention because we were talking about like John Krasinski's reaction to it, and I did read that Julie Andrews absolutely loved it. Like like just threw up her hands immediately afterwards and was like, I love it. And she like wrote this long email to the director, like explaining all the different things that she thinks they got right. And I'm glad that it seems like the type of movie that she would love. So
yeah,
if you appreciate Julie Andrews in general, I feel like you would appreciate a lot of the same things she did about it. Yeah, I have so many lines I love, but I think the funniest one to me, or at least the one that like every time I hear it, I kind of laugh, is so they just met Mary Poppins and they're up getting ready for their bath, and so one of the kids goes in and then the other one goes in, and the sister is worried that whether or not they're going to be okay. And so Mary Poppins says, I can't remember where I put it, but anyway, she says something to the effect of, well, it is just a bath after all, but then again, it's not my tub. So
Nice.
I loved her. There were so many like little witty lines like that.
Yeah.
That I feel like that's one of the reasons why I think seeing it a second time, I mean, that one you probably caught the first time, but I think one of the reasons seeing it a second time,
you always
I
catch
enjoyed it more.
lines.
Yeah, you catch it more.
Because your brain's not having to work to process the story as much.
Yeah.
You already know what's going to happen, so you can really catch those lines.
See the details, yeah.
At that same part, that's actually one of my favorite parts of the whole movie, I should say, is I love the non-magical parts of it. And I always have, like, or the pseudo-magical before,
Yeah.
not in the make-believe world,
Just
but like
before they
when
jump
they're
in the
snapping
picture,
the
just
rooms
before,
together,
yeah.
or, you know, so when she slides back up the railing again, and then she's in there with them telling them they need to take a bath, and she's just acting like a regular old nanny, but then, you know, she's pulling things out of her purse and whatever, and one of the boys is like, but I don't like bubbles, and she's like, well, you'll have to try so hard to avoid them or whatever. She's like, oh no, well then you'll just have to try and avoid them. She just had this real snarkiness about it, and I loved it. I just thought it was so cool watching her get ready. And as she's getting ready and they see the dolphin, and they're all like starting to be like, whoa, what? Like at first they all thought the little boy was crazy, but then they're starting to see things. And it was just really, really fun. A fun intro into her character and their relationship together. So that was awesome. I was actually really surprised at how much I loved that part. I loved them being in their room. And I love how much it felt like it was their old house.
Yeah.
So like it just felt so Mary Poppins to be in their room with her.
Yeah.
I did wish that they would have like done something themselves, like how they snapped the room back in place.
Yeah.
Like when she started picking up the papers and was like, well, come on, help out. And they all just kind of helped out like regular people do.
You wanted them to learn the magic.
Yeah, I kind of wanted them to, I wanted her to be like, come on, help out, and like have them do something, like a wink or something. I don't know.
But I will
that's
say
okay.
I really liked the kids too. That was another thing. Like
they were adorable.
The older two, they were so different from Jane and Michael. So I think that added something. Like they had to learn to grow up really fast because their mom had died, and they were trying to help their dad. And so just, I don't know. I liked that dynamic that they set early on with them of like, oh, the pipes burst, they know exactly what to do, and they're gonna go take care of the grocery shopping, and they called the repairman and everything. It made sense why they were like, oh, we don't need a nanny, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I love, that's what I was saying. So I don't know if I mentioned that before, but I was thinking that during the movie, that in the original one she was coming to save Mr. Banks. I did say this in the episode before, because I remember saying like, well, she was saving Mr. Banks, like that, you know, that's why they made a whole movie called Saving Mr. Banks. But she was saving Mr. Banks, and she was kind of teaching him, or like showing him what it was like to be a kid again, and to like have fun and like enjoy life. And in this one, the kids needed that because they had lost their innocence too early. So Mr. Banks needed to like kind of relearn that. But yeah, I said that she's still silly and fun, and she hasn't lost her innocence and like love of life. And that's what she helps people to do, is to like remember to love life, to look for the, you know, spoonful of sugar that can help the medicine go down. Like, there's the good with the bad. The robin feathering his nest has very little time to rest, but he knows the song will move the job along, right?
And a lot of those little like lines that they had that taught different lessons, like they did a great job with the songs this time of doing the same thing without necessarily always hitting you over the head with it. Yeah. Because I think that that's one thing that movies struggle with, is when they decide that they want to teach some moral or lesson, sometimes they hit you over the head with it and it makes the song not that good. But
Yeah.
this was like, you know, I don't know.
Well, I mean, she had kind of always spoke in almost riddles, you know, and
Yeah.
so I think,
a cover
like,
is not the book, you
Yeah.
know, like
that song was I think it was my favorite. Now, unfortunately, I did get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the bathtub song, and I do think I was enjoying that a lot.
Yeah,
so
you
I
like
want to
that
go
one
back and
too.
watch it again. But that one felt so Mary Poppins, and I was actually really nervous about that part when I saw the trailer and they were dancing, because her hair changes during that part.
yeah.
And I remember being like, it just doesn't feel Mary Poppins-y, you know, but it's like, whatever. She changes outfits and stuff throughout,
it seemed
you know.
like it fit with the time period, because this was like just after the 20s. It was
That's
the 30s,
true.
but it was, you know, during the Depression, and it was I don't know, I just think of like the flapper dresses and the music in that
Yeah.
time period, and like I feel like she was kind of
It worked.
stepping
And
into
you know
that.
what's interesting is I was thinking about it. The way she sings that song is so very different than the way Mary Poppins sang anything else. Like, it's very
Yeah.
kind of like over the top, like, oh, I don't know, like showgirly, or like really almost like
Yeah.
she's gonna like hit you with her elbow, like, oh, the cover is not the book. She's very, it's like her transatlantic kind of accent
Yeah.
instead of British. But I think even though it was so different, it still felt so, I guess, like I said, in the spirit of it. It felt
Yeah.
so much, because clearly I think if you wanted to, you could clearly go through and say, oh, this song's supposed to be like that song. And so that one was going to be like the supercalifragilistic type of song. It even had the penguins in it, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was the fun, over the top, silly song. And then you had the Triple Little Light Fantastic was the chimney, or the Step in Time
Yeah.
song, you know? So like you could go through a lot of them and kind of point out the mood of each one, and I thought they did a great job capturing that mood. And the
Yeah.
penguins, I was just happy to see the penguins again, and I thought the dancing
That was
was
a fun cameo, because I mean, you can't really mess up the penguins. The penguins are
Yeah.
gonna be exactly the same.
They're great.
You just draw them the same.
Yeah, and so that was funny. I thought that was great.
The penguin did get a kiss from Mary Poppins, which was cute.
Mhm.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, one thing I wasn't sure about it, I think in the episode I said that it might have been the 40s or 50s, but it was actually 1935, because it's supposed to be 25 years after. So I read that when I was looking through. So yeah, I mean, it was really interesting. I thought it was cool how they aged it up. So, you know,
Yeah.
instead of having, you know, they had all the lamp-lighters, and, you know, the woman, Jane,
There were some cars.
was working with, what was it called? Do you remember? It was basically like a union type group, or like working for
Yeah.
workers' rights type
Yeah.
of thing. And so I like how she was like her mother as a
Mhm.
social activist, but
That was awesome.
for the new time. So like, you know, her mother fought the suffragettes fight, and she helped them get the right to vote. I don't actually know when women in London got the right to vote, but I'm assuming she helped them by that point, and they
I
had
think
moved
it
on to
was
the next thing.
Not too long after that. I believe they got it before those in the U.S., and it was
Okay.
sometime in the teens
Yeah.
in the U.S., so.
Okay, so there
Yeah.
you go. But yeah, I mean, I think obviously because she had moved on, but I thought it was so cool. That's like you were saying, like you see how Michael is such a good father. So his dad must have really changed, you know,
Yeah.
not just for a day at the end of the thing.
Yeah.
He didn't just go fly a kite. He also lived his life differently. And I mean, clearly he also made an impression on everybody else too. I think they made that pretty clear. Like, oh, your father was, what was his name? Mr. Banks. I don't know. I can't think of his name.
Remember.
But like all the people that had worked with his father, like they knew he was an important person at
yeah,
that
and I
bank.
mean, they did make
So he
him
left an impression
a
on them.
partner at the end
Mhm.
of the original movie, but still, like, you could be a partner and people still
and not
might
be remembered fondly.
Yeah.
So I mean, but yeah, so there was that, and then the fact that Jane grew up to be like her mom, I thought that was pretty cool. And she was wearing pants, which I
That
think
was
is an
very
obvious
modern.
statement that she
Yeah.
was wearing. She very clearly was wearing them.
She was wearing pants
because
she
she
wasn't
was
married.
one of those women. Yeah, she wasn't married, and she said she wasn't really worried about that too. Like
Yeah.
at one point, she said something like, "Oh, I think that's past for me." Like,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, I liked that aspect of it.
Not that
Um,
there's, I mean, you can get married young. That's, we
Yeah.
obviously did,
You
but
can do whatever you want. That's
but
the
I
point.
think that it's cool that she was just very much her own woman.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I just saw a meme today that was Cinderella, and it was the prince saying, "You can't leave. It's only midnight." And she said, "Let's get this straight. I can do whatever the F I want." And I like that.
I think
But-
Jane was very much in the spirit of that.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I loved her. And she was such a good sister, such a good aunt, helping the kids out. And I'm sure it was hard for her too, you know, losing
I felt
a
like
sister-in-law.
whenever, yeah. And I felt like whenever she and Michael interacted, like even when things were going poorly, she was that kind of like, she would help kind of boost his spirits, but not in a like pushy buck up sort of way. She just was so awesome with him.
She was very tender, I think.
She was tender.
Is she the older? She's the older sibling,
yeah,
right?
and she kind of knew how to like make him laugh too, and it was just that
Yeah.
was really cool.
I think as far as the animation, that was one of the things I was concerned about too, just because I'm like, okay, it was clear they were trying to make it look more like the old school animation.
Yeah,
And I'm glad that they did that, and it really worked. Like,
it worked because it was on a what they were jumping into. You know, it was like, well, they weren't jumping into it, but you know, it was on a glass ceramic bowl.
yeah,
And so-
exactly. Yeah. So like the other one was all, you know, when they jumped into the chalk drawings, and yeah, the animation just really worked because they didn't try to make it look too realistic or anything like that. We have all this realistic, you know, kind of photorealistic animation happening with these new Disney movies and stuff, but they knew that they had to go back to kind of the kind of, I don't know, not cheesy, but like the really cutesy animation where it like was the flowers swirling around her, the bright colors, which are so
Yeah.
important. And I've actually seen before, there was some artist or photographer who went through a bunch of movie posters and added more color to them, because there's
Yeah.
been a trend over the past, you know, couple of decades really, where movies have gotten darker and darker in actual color dynamics. So like none of the blues are bright, none of the reds are bright. They're all like the darker aspects. And I was kind of worried they were going to make this darker, but no, they still had the bright colors, which
Yeah.
I think is important for the mood of it.
It visually was stunning and not. I think it could have very easily been distracting, but they did a good job too of making it feel like when they were actually in London, it kind of felt like it was a stage, kind of like the original. So there was a little bit of continuity there with it
Definitely.
feeling like the same place, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think even with like the lamplighters and their dance and going kind of from, it looked like they were going from like set to set, almost, you know, like scene to scene. So yeah, I thought that they did a great job.
So one of the things before we get away from the animation part was I loved her voice in even the first song they did there when she did the little kind of growl thing when she said music hall. It was just like her kind of adding her own flair to it. And I don't know. I thought she was fantastic on that one.
Yeah, and she kind of had to do her own thing because, like you said, her voice register is not as high as...
Yeah, she couldn't show off in the same way.
She can't sing the way Julie Andrews does.
No.
And I mean,
Nobody
wouldn't try
can.
to. Yeah, I
like,
mean...
I'm obsessed with Julie Andrews.
Well,
Nobody can sing like
there's
her.
that part where Julie Andrews sings really high. Is it when she's singing with the
Spoonful
bird?
of Sugar? Where it's like when she's competing with herself.
Oh yeah, she's competing
in the
with the mirror.
Yeah.
And it's insane how high she sings. And so we're both singers and we're both altos.
Yes.
And so we know what it's like where it's like we can't. We just could not do that. It doesn't mean we're bad singers. It just means we don't have that range.
There's been stage productions of Mary Poppins, and I remember thinking, like, as much as I like, even when it's just like the local community theater or whatever, as much as I'd love to try out for something like that, I'm like, oh, I can't hit those notes, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe I can do Mary Poppins Returns.
Yeah, there you go. You've never really been much. You've never been.
I've never acted in my life,
but you
could
know, totally
I can dream.
Be Mary Poppins. But yeah, I mean, she did a great job. That to a certain extent, I did feel like, oh, I missed the high stuff because that does feel very Mary Poppins. But she, like you said, she added her own flair. It worked. It didn't take away from it, I don't think.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I had another point.
Should we talk about the community that they had? Like, I was thinking about, you know how I was saying it felt like the same place. Like, they had the old guy who came out every day, and one of the things,
cannon.
Yeah, with the cannon. And I loved, like, I loved how they all kind of saw it as this, like, sweet, quirky thing. And even when they did start to lose their house, how, like, him and his second mate or whatever were, like, there for them in that time. And their other neighbors came out and showed up. And it's just, like, it was really... I don't know. His character was so sweet in this one. Like in the first one, it was just more kind of this like
The
weird
crazy old bat next door.
Yeah, like weird random things stuck in there. But in this one, like they did a good job of working it into the story and kind of letting you see that like it wasn't just Mary Poppins caring for them. Like the whole community kind of was there for them, and that was cool.
Yeah, which I mean, if they grew up there and Michael was still living in that home, he'd been there quite a long time. So,
Yeah.
you know, he probably got to know the neighbors, you know, and especially after his dad decided to spend more time with family and not just work to the bone, you know.
Yeah.
He might have been like, let's get to know the people around us. And yeah, I thought that was cool. I mean, they clearly knew a chimney sweep. They knew a one-man band and a screever and a kite salesman. So they knew regular folk.
Those were all the same person,
Yeah.
but okay.
But, you know, I do think that's something, too, is like they were pretty wealthy in the first one. I mean, their father worked really hard, but they had a nice house and they could hire a nanny. They could hire multiple nannies after they got fired, you know. So, yeah, money was so important to him. And then he learned that there's value in other things in life. And in this one,
you learn that there's value in money.
yeah, actually a little bit that, you know, like, okay, money can be helpful sometimes. No, I mean, it is a problem. So that we didn't mention that. So like, yes, he lost his wife, but the actual problem, the whole conflict is that they need to save the house. Basically,
Yeah.
He took a loan out and he can't pay it back. And the bank is being awful. And Colin Firth is
With
being
that
awful.
Bad face.
And he acted all nice. And oh, it was tricky. I knew when he was acting nice, I was like, nope, I don't trust
They
this
actually
guy.
did a really good job too with kind of they had the wolf in the animation, and then
Yeah.
later you kind of like you could see the parallels, like, and then the kid was like, oh wait, he's the wolf, you
Yeah,
know.
I like that.
That
I
was
like that
kind
the
of a
kid
cute-
realized that, because for little kids, they may not pick up on that if the kid doesn't say that.
Yeah.
You know, so I thought they did a good job of like, they sing the song, the lesson that, you know, not everything is what it seems to be. And he's basically a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's
Yeah,
very
the
like
cover is not
traditional
the
bad
book.
guy.
Yeah.
And he did a good job. I did not like him, but that's good.
But
'Cause,
he
like, you
did-
shouldn't
yeah.
have liked him. He did a good job. He was very frustrating, and you're like, how can you be so cruel?
Yeah.
You know, but there are people like that in the world. I think that, you know, that's why I told Charlie that we need Mary Poppins, and that he's basically, that her whole goal in the first one was to show people that you can like have love and laughter and like goodness in the world, and it doesn't have to all be about money and awful things. And I was like, that's how the world is today, and that's why we need Mary Poppins Returns. I was
Yeah.
like, it's like a gift. And he was like, no, they just want money. And I was like, you're being cynical.
Well, they do just want
You're
money.
being cynical.
But
Yeah.
they
But
did a really good job.
That doesn't mean that they didn't work really hard to make it wonderful for us. And I mean, okay, so that's one thing. I saw that, I think it was, once again, Emily Blunt talking about it, but she was talking about when Dick Van Dyke was on set.
Yeah.
And she was saying that at one point he said to, I don't know if it was the writer or the director, but he said, I feel the same spirit here that I did on the first
Yeah.
set. And they like, you know, made them cry. They were all so, she was saying they were all emotional because it was
He
so
looked
wonderful
like
to
he
have
was
him
emotional
there.
at the end, like the very last, like when you see him sitting in the chair and they like start to cut
Yeah.
away, like his eyes looked
Well,
kind
he's
of
92 years old.
Yeah, no,
So-
93 now.
93 now?
Yeah,
So
I just
the
looked it
fact
up.
that he is capable of coming in and doing any type of dancing, any type of
Yeah.
anything, like he's amazing.
He
And
was,
I mean,
that dancing was so good too. He like got up on a desk
yeah.
and was
They were all
like-
really impressed with him. They didn't, you know, they were like, we were just going to see basically what we could do with him. And he was so into it. And it was so cool watching him up there tap dancing on a desk. And, you
Yeah.
know, it wasn't like the huge wild dance moves, but it was super impressive for his age.
and so when he sat there and he started saying, let me tell you a story, and he said,
yeah.
there was a man with a wooden leg, and I immediately like busted up laughing.
Yeah.
I think almost even too soon because it was
Yeah.
just so perfect. And he's like, oh wait, that's not the story.
Oh, wait, that's another story. Yeah, the thing is, that's basically what we call an Easter egg,
Mhm.
because none of the new kids, none of the little kids who haven't seen the other one, if anyone's
Yeah.
seeing this first, they have no idea what he's doing. It's, you know, fine. But it's such a fun Easter egg. And it's so funny because I I just think it's funny because for me, that's one of the things that was very memorable to me as a kid. I always remembered that joke.
Yeah.
There's lots of things that I
It was
remember,
short
but that's
enough
what I
as a
hung
kid
on
that you
to.
could recite it. I think that
And
was
as a
part of
kid,
it.
you get it. Like,
Yeah.
it's like a knock knock joke. It's simple and funny. And so when we were doing our trivia night, I actually was gonna say finish the joke.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to phrase it. So like I was like, I knew a man with a wooden leg named Smith. I was going to play that clip, stop it, and be like, what comes next?
Yeah.
But Charlie thought it would be too hard. Well, now I see that they thought it was well known enough to put it in there as an Easter egg for all of us fans.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was so funny. And oh, I love that they mentioned Bert. That's one thing I said is that I really
early
wanted
on.
them to show Bert. I really did. But I get why they didn't. Because maybe because it's kind of like the whole ruining your childhood thing. It's like, do you really want to see Bert all old?
Yeah.
Whereas the banker was already old when he was young, which is kind of part of the joke.
It's kind of
like,
incredible how much, like, I have seen the original recently because about a month ago I made Aubrey watch it because I was like, we're going to see the new one soon. You got to watch the old one. And I'm like, it's kind of amazing how well they did with the makeup back then. Of course, he had the beard and all that, so I think that helps
because
but
you don't
I'm
have
just
to
like,
worry
wow,
about too many wrinkles.
He really does look the same.
They did such
in
a
the
good job.
makeup
I've
back
seen
then
the
as he
side
does
by
now.
side,
Yeah.
and it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
He looks a little better now, but
Yeah, well, but I mean, honestly, like, I feel like if it wasn't for that character in the original, it might be kind of weird having him in this one. But because there was a character that he could play,
it wouldn't really make sense to just throw Dick Van Dyke in.
it wasn't like, oh,
Not
look,
as-
there's Bert playing a different character.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, look, there's the banker
character
from
from
the
before,
first one,
yeah.
but it's actually a son because we know the first one died laughing. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I loved him in it, but I thought it was cool that she mentioned it. So when she was talking with Jack, she was like, how is old Bert?
Yeah,
so
that
they
was
mentioned it, he's out there. That's all I needed to know. And it confirms the fan theory. Well, at least confirms the fan theory that she doesn't age. There was a fan theory that she must have been Bert's nanny when he was a kid because he said
he knew
there's
her
a
so
feeling
well.
of the air. There's something that I've felt before. He knew she was coming in. He knew her very well. And
it
thing
might
that's
not have
kind
even
of
been
sad,
a nanny because he was obviously
maybe he
poor,
was. Well, I was gonna say the thing
but-
that's kind of sad is he kind of, since he's working 4 different jobs and he's kind of working like the jobs of the blue collar worker, I kind of feel like he doesn't have anybody. So maybe he was just like an orphan on the street that she was kind to. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, they clearly knew each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was good that they mentioned him. I think it's good that Julie Andrews wasn't in it. That was one thing I wanted to say is that I think
I get
she
that.
made the right call, and I think the character they would have had her play is the one that Angela Lansbury actually played, which, by the way, I looked up. She's Mrs. Potts, but she was like the voice of Mrs. Potts from she
Wasn't
did the
Meryl
balloon.
Streep in it? Oh, Angela.
No,
I see
Angela
what you're saying.
Lansbury did the balloon
lady.
lady
okay.
at the end, and
Oh my
she's
gosh,
actually
Mrs. Potts. I just
she
realized.
is 93 as well, same age as
Awesome.
Dick Van Dyke. I don't think she could dance like that, but she is 93.
But she could
can
hand
still
you a
sing.
balloon.
Yes, can hand you a balloon, and she did a great job. And I think
Yeah.
that had that role been given to Julie Andrews, it would have been kind of weird and confusing because you would have thought, so are they trying to say that there's like, are there multiple Mary
Multiples, yeah.
Poppins and one aged, but there's a new one? Or
well, it's like you
it
said
could've been
about
weird.
Bert. I mean, it's like you don't want to just see Bert playing a different character.
Yeah.
It's like, why is Mary Poppins playing somebody else now? Yeah, it would just feel weird.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't, whereas he had a character he could play. So she was just Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
And I do like that she said she didn't want to upstage anyone, and I get that. And then I also said in the in our last episode that I was like, or maybe she also was just like, I'm freaking Mary Poppins. I'm not playing a smaller role. Like, no, I will not settle for less than Mary Poppins, because why would you? Like, you were already Mary Poppins. Why do you want to be some balloon lady? Like, you've already got the top of the top. But, yeah, I thought the side characters were fine. I wasn't like I didn't like Topsy as well as I liked
Yeah.
Uncle Albert.
There wasn't
but it's
anything
just
wrong
different.
with Topsy. It just, it was a very different character. I mean, she wasn't, the thing is, it's so hard not to laugh when somebody else is just losing their mind laughing. So it wasn't necessarily that he was just some amazing actor or anything. It's just really funny. The situation
well,
was
I
really
liked
funny.
the situation a little more. I do think, because like the whole turning upside down thing, it was a clever way to still have something crazy happening.
Yeah.
And I do think that it was fun to have.
I think it was from the book too.
Like a crazy, quirky lady.
Yeah.
I just didn't care for the song as much. And that was fine.
I will say that was one of the things that my my almost 6-year-old daughter remembered a lot more, though. Like something came up later and I was like, oh, it's turning turtle or whatever. I said something about that and we were talking about that and she was like, yeah, and then when then they just have to turn upside down and then it all makes sense. And like, so she kind of I think that sometimes things that didn't necessarily work for me maybe might work for the kids, you know. I don't know.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, there was nothing wrong with the way she played the character. She was definitely a fun character.
It's when you compare it to the original.
Well, and also Uncle Albert didn't sing. Like there wasn't a song for that
true.
part. So I mean,
he kind of sang a few
little
parts of the I Love to Laugh.
Oh, you're right.
Like when they were both
I forgot about I Love to Laugh.
Yeah.
That's a good song.
But I mean, but yeah, I think that part wasn't one of my favorites. I didn't really like Trip a Little Light Fantastic as much as some of the others. However, when I think about it, as a kid, I always thought that Step in Time was a little long too. Like I liked Step in Time.
Yeah.
It repeated over and over and over though. And eventually you're just like, oh, okay, come on, let's get to the next part.
Well, and so, okay. So Trip a Little Light Fantastic. Afterwards, I had to ask Jacqueline and my mom, what were they saying? Because I was so confused because I thought that's what they were saying. But I was like, what the heck is that? It's just nonsense words.
And I didn't mean anything to me.
And then my mom was like, you guys haven't heard that before? I'm like,
Trip
what?
a Little Light. I'm like, no.
And so I looked it up today because I was curious.
Okay.
And it's Trip the Light Fantastic. Fantastic is a part of the phrase.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I was like, what? Apparently it was written in the 1600s by someone in some story, and that same person wrote it in a poem as well. But basically it means to dance in a humorous way, often like ball dancing, but like a light, like, because I think it's like,
that makes a lot more sense.
They said that online they were saying that like people used to use the word trip in place of dance. Like, oh, do you want to, like, I don't know, like, I think it's just kind of like, you know, a silly way of saying dance. Like you're just kind of tripping all over the place, but you're actually dancing. You're moving your feet all over or whatever. But it was so weird because I'm like, I had no idea.
Well, and that, I think that
was a thing.
The thing I kept reminding myself too is that there were a lot of phrases in Mary Poppins that sounded weird to me that I didn't necessarily, I mean, I still don't really know, like, where does Step in Time come from? And like some of the things that even have worked its way into my vernacular, I never heard, you never hear anywhere else. Like, who says spit spot? Like, where did that come from? And maybe it really was a phrase back then, but I only use it because Mary Poppins
I feel like
used
it was a phrase, but then I'm like, yeah, wait, maybe it's just because I saw it at that. You know, sometimes you don't remember where you first heard something.
So I think it was fine. I think it was just kind of a little long, which so was most musicals of that era, and even some today, like you have that one number that is longer than usual so that you can have the big dance sequence. And we're just not as into dance as some people.
But the dance was cool, and I thought it was the same spirit of it. The only thing that I wish was that there was more humor in that part, because it was really funny when they came in through the house and they like when, what was it? They're repeating everything, and then somebody, I think it's Mr. Banks, starts yelling, "It's
the master!"
Yeah,
and then he says, "What's all this?" Yeah. And then they start repeating it.
And so there was a lot of humor.
Yeah,
we were definitely missing some humor in this. Now, like I said, they kept in the humor we had was still the same spirit.
There was wit, but it wasn't.
We were
the
missing
silly
some
humor
of it
as much. Yeah,
we were missing the Bert humor.
Yeah.
And this is what I got to get to. But let me see real fast. Oh, so one thing I just wanted to say before we get to Lin-Manuel and Bert is, so I told Charlie that I just wanted Mary Poppins to sing to me and tell me that everything was going to be okay. And she did.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the reasons I think we're both saying, like, go see it, because it's just a feel good movie. It's sweet. It reminds you of like good things in the world, good people, and what's important. And the songs are so sweet. The song about like things that are what was
Where the lost things go. Yeah,
Thank you.
nothing's gone forever.
Jacqueline's seen
Only
it
out
twice
of
and
place.
listens to the music, so she knows.
That's
what I
my
mean.
favorite
But
song
it's
from
such
the movie
it's so
too.
sweet, and it's so sweet when the little boy sings it. I mean, and it's something that we can all think about because all of us have lost probably. I mean, maybe some of the really young kids haven't really lost anyone yet, but we all have lost people or will lose people, and it's something really sweet to think about. And I think there's just a lot of cool life lessons in it, and it definitely achieved its purpose. And I hope lots of people out there are enjoying it and not just giving it 68% and saying it wasn't like the original.
Yeah. I will say, especially I mean, there are a lot of great movies out there right now, so it's hard to say go see it twice necessarily. But even if you don't go see it twice, I would say if you see it the first time and you're like, yeah, it was okay, I would say at least just rent it and see it one more time.
Yeah.
Because I think
it'll
it's
probably
worth
be
it.
on streaming because it's Disney.
Yeah.
So it'll be
That's
on
true.
Netflix because I think Disney's still technically contractually
until
obligated.
sometime next year.
So we'll see. I mean, it'll be somewhere. If not, it'll be on the Disney streaming service, perhaps. I don't know.
But I would say definitely like
Rent it, Redbox it. It's
at
worth
least
it.
see it once. But if you're kind of on the fence about it, I think that like that second time kind of it's hard because some people are better at understanding the British accent too. I think that's
true.
part of
Yeah.
it. Is
You
that
can
there were a
miss
few
jokes and
things
stuff.
that I missed the first time around too, probably just because I'm like trying to
Well, like I said, your brain's trying to comprehend the story. It's trying to
Yeah.
follow, and so you might miss things. Okay, so I'm gonna try and wrap it up because this is going a little
Yeah.
longer than normal,
Sorry, guys.
but that's all right. So Lin-Manuel, one of the only complaints that I might have, if it is really a complaint at all, is that Lin-Manuel wasn't as funny as Dick Van Dyke.
he's not a
I
comedian.
said he wasn't gonna be like in our episode. I was like, it's not saying Lin-Manuel is no Dick Van Dyke is not a fair statement because nobody is a Dick Van Dyke.
Yes.
Like
That's true.
ridiculous. That's like saying Emily Blunt is no Julie Andrews. Of course they aren't.
Yeah.
They can't be these great people. They have to be themselves.
And Emily Blunt is amazing in her own
She did
right.
great.
And I think the same thing can be said for Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's just that I think the thing with him is that we haven't seen him in movies really yet. And so he's
That's
still
true.
kind of, I mean,
He's a stage actor, but that
so was
works for
Julie
Mary
Andrews.
Poppins.
Yeah, Julie Andrews was a stage actor, and that's the first thing she'd ever done. And
I mean,
she
like
won,
you said, it kind of feels
an
like you're on
Academy
a set,
Award.
so it's a really good movie for stage actors.
Yeah.
And I think he was right at home
Yeah.
doing all of that stuff. He's a great dancer. He's a great singer. The thing is, he's not a comedian, and Dick Van Dyke at like his root is a comedian. He's so funny. It's just he can't help but be funny all the time.
Yeah.
And so there was a little less humor from his character. It was more a fun character. You know, he kind of was facilitating moving from scene to scene at times, facilitating Mary Poppins, you know, kind of introducing her and such. And they had a good relationship, but yeah, there was just a little bit of humor missing. And I know that Lin-Manuel in and of himself was a complaint that your husband had.
Yeah.
He didn't think it was casted well. And I was going to say, if you could have casted somebody else, who would you have casted?
Huh.
I probably should have warned you about that because we could have had ideas in mind.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure that there are people who are both, you know, musically inclined and funny. This is going to sound insane, but I haven't had any time to think about this.
But okay.
I'm going to throw it out there like Wayne Brady. But
There
then
you
again,
go.
that wouldn't have actually worked for the time period. And I don't know about him with a British accent.
I am good with it. I'd like to see this. Let's do the next one, Wayne Brady. No, yeah. No, I
I'm
was
just
thinking, I was thinking of somebody comedic that would fit the role, and I was thinking John Mulaney, but I don't know. I think he can sing. I think I've heard him sing, but I don't know if he can act.
He
you
probably
know?
can't dance. He
Yeah,
looks like he has
exactly.
like this
Yeah, that's
long,
it.
lanky, like he looks like he would trip over.
Yeah,
his
that's what
own
my
2
friend said today
feet.
because we were talking about that at lunch. They were like, "No, I can tell he's not going to be able to dance." But you know, it is a really tough spot to fill. And if you're going to fill a spot and you have to give up one, whether it's singing, dancing, or comedy, it makes sense to give up the comedy because you can write the comedic stuff in.
Yeah.
Even if they're not oozing it, it may not be as natural, but you can write it in and make it work. And I'm sure there was funny parts if I went back and saw it that he did as well. But like I said, I mean, he didn't have to be the comedic relief. We have comedy all throughout.
And I think that goes back to it's a complaint that we have because we're comparing it to the original.
Yeah.
If you had never seen the original
character, we wouldn't be like,
you might have liked it because you weren't
not that
expecting
funny.
comedy out of him, you know? you might even think he was funny because you're not comparing him to Dick
Yeah.
Van Dyke, which is just an impossible comparison.
Well, and I thought he was really fun, and I liked him
Yeah.
with the guys, and I loved the climbing the clock tower.
That one was
I thought
fun.
it was so cool and funny. It's such a like fantastical thing
Yeah.
that they're doing. And I mean, they did some crazy stuff on the rooftops in the original one too.
Yeah.
But like it's so clearly impossible,
What
but nothing
you-
is impossible or everything is possible, even the impossible.
Yeah.
It's like so clearly impossible.
That
but
was where one of your favorite jokes was too.
Yeah, when
Mary
she's like-
Poppins.
what did she say? Seriously. Or
She was like, "Oh, honestly,
Honestly.
you'd think they'd never done this before."
I saw that in the trailer, just her saying that, but
Yeah.
that's such a classic Emily Blunt Mary Poppins moment, because the way she like rolls her eyes, because Mary Poppins rolls her eyes a lot, like in the
Yeah.
original too. She kind of like, it's part of her humor, but the way she rolls her eyes with that and the way she makes it really just sound like, gosh, look at these fools. It's like they've never done it before. It's like, of course they've never done this before. This is insanity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I loved that line. I think it was really, really fun. It's the type of movie that someday when I have kids, I'll want to show them. I think
Yeah.
it definitely is good enough to do that. It's not like, you know, Pocahontas 2 or something. You know what I mean?
Oh,
it's,
no.
It's not like all the crappy sequels that Disney just made just for money. So that's the thing where I'm saying, like, yeah, Disney has done things just for money, but I think they cared enough about this one to make it right.
I think it, not just Disney, but I just think everybody involved really put their heart into it.
Yeah. I mean, it was good. The more I talk about it, the more it's leaning toward awesome, but I'll still say it was good.
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you to Jacqueline
You're welcome.
for joining me today. I'm sure eventually I'll make Charlie watch it and he'll have his own thoughts. He doesn't like musicals because he's closed-minded, but that's okay. Before I go, I just have to let everybody know we are now officially on Spotify. So you have chosen to listen to us in some other way up until now, but if you prefer Spotify, we're on that platform. So tell your friends, let them know. That's pretty cool. And as always, you can find us at mttpodcast.com. You can check us out on Facebook, Movie Trailer Trash Podcast, and that's where you get the most updates. So I would follow us there, and please subscribe, comment, and rate and review us. That helps us out a lot. And check out our friends at Entertainment Buffet. They have their own thing going on YouTube. It's pretty great and pretty funny. So we will see you guys next time, and Charlie will be back with me for the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.